Our first speaker for the day is Becky Thomas, who's going to tell us about High Five Friday. So I'm going to hand over to Becky and I'll run slides for you. It's all yours.
Thank you. That's very kind. Thank you very much. So thank you to everybody. So thank you to you all for coming along to listen to me this morning. And I guess really at the outset, I just want to let you know that I'm by no means an expert in positive thinking or positive mindset. But I guess I am a bit of an expert through experience. So I do want to share something quite personal with you in terms of personal journey. And I am actually a stage 4 bowel cancer survivor. And I strongly believe that a positive mindset contributed towards me still being here today and talking with you guys. So this is something that I feel quite invested in. And actually, there's nothing more sobering than being told you can't be cured. But next week, I have my final follow-up scan. And don't get me wrong, I still experience anxiety. And in my head, the cancer's returned a million times. But my rational brain, when it gets a chance to speak, tells me that I'm fit and well. So I'm looking forward to getting that scan out of the way and actually then being able to declare that I am cancer free. So that's that's a really big deal for me, and it would be a great Christmas present. So I'm looking forward to that. So next slide, please. So why did I start it? So I guess really it came from an opportunity where I was listening to a lady called Professor Jem Stacey, who is the director of the Florence Nightingale Foundation or Academy. And she did a recent webinar on managing your energy in the ebb and flow of a pandemic. And in the webinar, she talked about the 4 leadership energies framework, something I hadn't heard about before. Sorry, next slide. I'm getting confused myself now with my slides. And in that webinar, this was a quote that she used, which is from a Harvard Business Review paper by Schwartz McCarthy. And you can read it there. It says, every thought, every emotion, and every feeling we have influences our energy. And whether it depletes us or rejuvenates us, that's within our control. And I think given the current climate, I think this is something that we don't always remember to do. And she asked us to consider some actions or behavioural changes that we could make to better manage our energy, either for ourselves or those we can influence. And so I was compelled by this to want to do something to help healthcare staff take a moment of reflection and really think about the highlights of their week, no matter how small they might seem. And I've become quite a prolific, I never know how to pronounce, so either a twit or a twitterer, I don't know, twit is probably more, so I've become a prolific user of Twitter, I guess, then, over the last 6 months or so. And I've actually seen and experienced firsthand the power of connection on the Twitter platform. And I've become a member of lots of different social groups, and I feel like I found my tribe on Twitter. So it seemed like a natural and logical to me to use the platform to try and create, this is a bold statement, I suppose, but somewhat of a mini social movement using High Five Friday. And my initial thinking, to be honest, was if it works for one person, then I feel it has been helpful and successful. And so that's what I did, really. So what is it then? So the next slide, please. Sorry. So what is it and how do you get involved? So really, I wanted to just touch on what positive thinking is, or an optimistic attitude. And it's basically the practice of focusing on good in any given situation, something which I think we all could do with a friendly reminder about, particularly in the current climate. And I don't think it would come as any great surprise to anyone that it can have a huge impact on your physical and mental health. And it's not about ignoring reality or making light of problems. It simply means you approach the good and the bad in life and try and think of things that might go well. And there's many studies that have looked at the role of optimism and positive thinking in mental health and physical health. And a word I found recently, or a phrase I found recently, was something called realistic optimism. And it's about being optimistic about what will happen or what might happen, but whilst also acknowledging that things are difficult. So again, it's not about thinking that, you know, everything in the garden is rosy, and I'm not talking about some sort of Pollyanna view of the world, because unfortunately the world where it is trying to find our sense of optimism in that real in those times of adversity, and those times when things are really tough. And so, sorry, next slide please. And so just to touch a little bit on some of those positive possible benefits, and you can see them highlighted there in terms of physical health and mental health. And I mean, I'm sure some of those wouldn't really come as much surprise in terms of having that positive mindset. And going back to what I just said about my own personal journey, my own health journey, it definitely helped me with better tolerance to things like my chemotherapy, a terrible neuropathy as a result, constantly trapping my hands, even top to top of my finger off. And I just felt that trying to think positively in terms of, well, this poison is actually going to help me to live. I know that sounds quite dramatic, but that's where I was. But also I find that having that positive mindset more recently in terms of working helps me be more creative, helps me think more clearly, and, you know, gives you that better mood. And we know that behaviours and mood are contagious. And so if you turn up feeling a bit stormy and a bit miserable to work, the likelihood is that your team will very quickly feel that way as well. So all of this sounds great, right? But what if you're actually a little bit more naturally pessimistic? What if you're what I like to call a neg ferret? I can't attribute that to my own creativity. It's actually from a chap called Adrian Webster, who wrote a book called Polar Bear Pirates and Their Quest to Reach Fat City, which is all about how you motivate self and motivate others. And it's a fab little book, and he has some interesting terminology for different characteristics. But not to worry, you know, it may help you as somebody who is more naturally pessimistic to help see positive thinking as a skill that you can learn and actually benefit from, rather than thinking about it as a personality trait. And actually, my experience is that positive thinking is a bit like a muscle. You have to practice it to get better and get stronger with it. So it's absolutely great to think of it in that way. And there is some research on this too. And in one experiment, it was found that adults who meditate daily on positive thoughts started feeling, you know, more upbeat emotions every day. So basically, when you notice a negative thought, what I'm hoping High Five Friday will do is to help you kind of stop and shift your focus into a more positive thinking mindset, and try and think rationally about the situation. So I've just talked about, you know, I've scanxiety, and in my, you know, my chimp and my irrational part of my brain, you know, thinks that, you know, everything's going to be awful. But then with my rational, you know, when that rational part of my brain, when I allow that to come through, I very quickly calm myself down, and I think, oh, come on, don't be silly. There's no reason for you to think that way. And it'll help you let go. So it helps you let go of some of that negative feeling, and it gives you and yourself and those around you a little bit of grace, I suppose. And your negative thoughts aren't going to go away overnight. And like I've said, it's about practice. You can train yourself to have a more positive outlook. And remember that realistic optimism, it isn't about overlooking the facts. You're just trying to include and focus those facts that are good as opposed to those that are negative. So next step, please. So when I was looking into how you could practice some positive thinking, once you've kind of got your head around how you can maybe manage some of that negative thinking, and I looked into some of the things about how you can practice your positive thinking, and it wasn't surprising to me to see smile as one of the big things that came through there. Smiling is actually quite contagious, and there's a beautiful poem that's been shared quite there you go, see, Roy, see, I'm smiling already. There's a beautiful poem by Spike Milligan about smiling, and I will try and reshare that on Twitter. It's been doing the rounds a bit lately, but also a great songwriter and inspirational woman, I think, is the great Dolly Parton. And she says, if you see something someone without a smile, give them one of yours, because actually it's been studied, and people who smile, or even fake smile apparently, because I've been told this as well, while doing a stressful task, felt more positive afterwards than those who had a more neutral expression. But you would benefit, I guess, if the smile was more genuine, because you don't really want to see somebody smiling at you through gritted teeth. And humour. And so it's not just about smiling, it's about humour as well. When's the last time you had a really good belly laugh? There's nothing quite like it, is it? And I was asked recently a question, and I pose a question to you guys really, is who or what makes you laugh? And I just think even asking that question and thinking about those individuals or those situations that make you laugh, because you can find humour in most places, I think. And as healthcare professionals, I think we've got actually quite a dark sense of humour, and we can find humour in even the most dire of circumstances sometimes, because it helps us cope. It's a coping mechanism. The second thing is about reframing your situation, or reframing your mindset, reframing your thinking. So when something bad happens, it's out of your control, instead of getting upset about it, try and appreciate there must be some good parts. If you look deep enough, if you look hard enough, there must be some good parts in that situation. So for example, instead of stressing about a traffic jam, think about how convenient it is to have a car, and you could be stuck in that traffic jam in a bus. Or try not to think about the fact you could be on a train, which would be a lot easier, and there wouldn't be a traffic jam in the first place. And just use that time that you're stuck behind the wheel to listen to music or a program or something you enjoy, like maybe a podcast, at which point I just like to plug that I have a podcast called The Leadership Log, so check it out. It's all about everyday leadership. And one of the other things is about gratitude, and you see a lot of people. I know somebody from the Fab community shares 3 positive things a day, and they do it with their family, but also maybe thinking about keeping a gratitude journal. It may sound a bit cheesy, but I know there's a lot of people that do that. I guess it's whatever works for you really, but a study found that people who kept gratitude journals felt more thankful, positive and optimistic about the future, and they actually slept better as well. And then that bright vision bit is about picturing a bright future for yourself. And so, that sounds easier than it probably actually is. But yeah, if you can try and think about some of the some of your career, your relationships, your health, your hobbies, write it down. And when you imagine life going well, what does that look like? And research suggests you'll be happier in the present if you can focus on that kind of bright vision for your future. And then last but not least, there's something about focusing on your strengths. So each day for a week, think about your personal strengths, like kindness, discipline, creativity, and write down maybe how you plan to use that strength in new ways that day, and then act on it. And again, there's studies there that suggest that people who do that boosted their happiness and lowered symptoms of depression at the end of the week. And so, next slide, please. And so I think for me, that was just really kind of underpins why I wanted to do something like High Five Friday. I just thought it was something simple, something easy, with a big audience potentially, so the potential for a lot of influence. So if you want to get involved, essentially all it is, if you've got a Twitter account, if you haven't got a Twitter account, get one set up. On a Friday, I always share my top 5 highlights of the week. They don't have to be work related. They can be all personal. They can be whatever is important to you and wherever has been a high five highlight of your week. So next slide, please. So this was I think this was the very first. It was one of the very first High Five Fridays that I shared, and you can see there that Professor Gemma Stacey's getting in on the action, so she absolutely supports this in terms of trying to influence that broader positive thinking across the Twitter sphere, I guess. But hopefully it spills out further than that, and we may not know about that, but that's okay as well, isn't it? If it's happening out there broader than Twitter, then that's fantastic. Next slide, please. And here's just some examples, Gemma. Thank you very much. Gemma shared this tweet actually last week after her High Five Friday, and I hadn't even considered this. And Gemma had spent some time going back and looking at her High Five Fridays, and found that it was a really great way of reflecting. So that's great, because you're almost building that little, you know, like a jar where you drop those positive moments into it or something. You've almost got a digital imprint there where you can go back and look at those things. And then just some, you know, some shared love of High Five Friday in terms of people saying how much they love it, and they're engaging with it. And for me, I love it. So it kind of helps. Just keep doing it, because it helps me feel more positive going into the weekend, looking at everybody else's High Five Friday. Next slide, please. And also, actually, it was quite humbling for me to see, these are just two that I could find kind of when I was quickly putting these slides together, last minute, Annie. But there's Chris there talking about how he's had a terrible week, but he still decided to do High Five Friday. So for me, that demonstrates that the benefit of doing it, because, and again, the lovely Lou Waters, who I'm sure most of you will know, said, you know, that she'd been feeling a bit down that particular week, and it made her think of the good things. So in my mind's eye, for me, I feel like High Five Friday has been successful. It's not about number of people necessarily getting involved, but I would love to see more people getting involved, because simply because of this slide and previous slides in terms of the benefits. So that's it from me. Next slide, please. It's a very quick sort of overview of why I wanted to start High Five Friday. If you want to get in touch with me for any reason, it's my email and my Twitter handle. And I'd just like to say thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. That was a great start for our festival. It was really helpful. And thank you for sharing your personal story as well.
Yeah.
We've got a comment from Kate in the chat, suggested actually it would be using the positive fives, not just building relationships and using it for work side of things. So helps people understand their comments.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Can I just say something? I think the great trick to this is just to take a moment and write down the good things that have happened. Because in the week, I mean, I'm a kind of manic depressive. I'm sure I am, really. You know, I could lay on a beach in Barbados and worry about whether it's going to rain at 2 o'clock. But the thing is that, you know, you kind of end up focusing on all the bad things you've got to fix, or the things you haven't done, or the things that have gone wrong. And we kind of we kind of surf the wave of the good stuff, and we don't actually see how high the tide is of good stuff. And I think what you've taught us there is to measure the high tide of the good stuff, write it down. You know, 5 little things that happen. My card order arrived on time. You know, that's really important to me.
Yeah,
but you know, I'm not sort of downplaying this. It is often the little things that are the big things, as we can see our great guru has got posted up behind him this morning. But it's true. The closer you get to a little thing, the bigger it gets. And I think that's the idea of making a list at the end of the week. Just take a moment to think, you know, what is it? Every day I count my blessings, every night I count sheep, and every day I count on you. And, you know, I think I love that. I think it's really great. Don't think me rude. I've got to go and visit another tent. That was a great start. And thank you for getting us off to a fabulous start. I'll leave you all to talk about it when I'm gone. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.
So got a couple here that's asking, how did you manage to embed the positivity practice within your team? Have you actually spread it into the team and in the trust, or is it just on the internet?
So no, I have tried to spread it into the team, and I have to say it's not easy. It is a challenge, because I think people are like, oh, I haven't got time to think about positive things. I've got this to do, I've got that to do, and that got to do. And to be honest, there's a lovely little Welsh saying that our Welsh language officer said to me, and it's stuck with me, and I use it all the time. And it goes double donk ar y garreg, and what it means is keep tapping that stone and you break it. And so I think the thing around this is just that, keep encouraging, not to the point of being too pushy and, you know, being that person that's knocking on the door and trying to sell you whatever, but it's just, and making it visible, I think, in terms of what it is that we should be doing. I think it's more challenging at the minute because a lot of the team that I work in are working from home, so we're not often together face to face, and I think this is, you know, sometimes it's better to kind of push these things and grow these things from a face to face point of view. But I just keep asking my staff to think about it. I keep asking them to get involved. A lot of my team are on Twitter anyway, so I try and encourage them to get involved on Twitter. But as they say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Is there anybody from the audience who'd like to ask any questions?
Thanks for doing it.
That's all right. Gem is a huge ambassador for it. She does it every week, to be fair, and shares it far and wide. So thank you, Gem. I really appreciate it.
It's been good. I've got a similar problem with you with regards to the team. I don't think they're fully aware of Twitter, so I'm trying to make them more aware of Twitter, just because it's easier on a physio assistant leading from you know, in the middle and trying to do it that way, because there's many ways we can do it, I think. So fingers crossed it all carries on, because it's great. So I think I've passed it on to a few of my fellow people anyway. I'll be happy to know that he's in it anyway, Chris. So he's a fellow support worker, so it's obviously getting out there.
Yeah, it is. And like I said, going right the way back, I think it was never in my mind that it would become, I'd never even thought of the word social movement, to be honest, or I never really knew what to call it. It was something I just thought, you know what, let's give this a go. And so as it started to grow a little